He's attempting to do so right now.
That's seeing Director Lennox, right? Oh, there he goes.
I think Director Lennox's video is working, but he is online.
Okay, good. Just let me know when we're ready to go.
We are good to go, Chair.
Okay. It is 2 o'clock. Perfect time to start a 1 o'clock meeting of the regional board. Thank you all for coming. I apologize for the late start. We had a regional hospital board that had a lot of good stuff in it, so it went longer than expected. Approval of the agenda. I had emailed you about a motion I wanted to add. That one about the thank you letters.
No, Chair, I didn't, but I'll look right now.
Okay. Well, when would it be? Should I mention it now at the adoption of the agenda? Yeah. I'll be adding a motion. I think it'll be a very simple one. I can imagine we have a whole lot of opposition to it, but where would we add that?
Business?
Okay, under new business. Perfect. So through the agenda, we have the agenda in front of us. I'm going to add a motion under new business. Director Gisborne.
So moved as amended.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Lennox. Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Adoption of the minutes of the regular board meeting, August 23rd, 2023. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing no hands, moved Director Gisborne, seconded by Director Lennox. All in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Delegations and inquiries, we have none. No unfinished business. And we have correspondence from Rebecca Bishop regarding the emergency operations centers. So if there's no business arising from this correspondence, we'll move on to reports. Item 8.1 from BC Transit. We have a recommendation in front of us. Would somebody like to move that? What's that, CEO?
Do we have a presentation?
I don't know. Do we have a presentation?
Yes, we do, but we do also have a mover and a seconder.
Okay,
so.
well, I didn't see Mr. Ringbaugh on the screen. So we have a mover is Director McCormick and Director Lennox seconded it. Should we have the presentation before we actually do the vote? I would say.
I would say yes.
Yeah,
Really a good idea.
that's a good idea. Yeah, Mr. Ringbaugh. Thank you for joining us in the boardroom, and the floor is yours.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you, Chair, directors, and staff. Just going to promote this presentation. I am just trusting everybody can see that. Once I bring it up, you all look small, so.
Yes, we can see it.
Looks very good.
Excellent. Thank you, Director Dowd. I appreciate that. So yeah, sorry, Rob Ringland, I'm the Senior Manager of Government Relations. Most of you know me. I appreciate coming and presenting a bit of an update as well as some information on our transit improvement program. So today's agenda, I'll just quickly go through some ridership numbers. I'll talk a little bit about our transit expansion, transit improvement program. Give you a quick update on our modernized electronic fare payment and where we are in terms of timelines. I'll speak a little bit to digital on demand because I know that's a topic that this board's interested in, and then I'll take any questions. So I'll try to be fairly brief as we go through this. So this graph here is provincial ridership. And what you'll see in the white line is actually 2023 ridership. So you can see that we were tracking just behind 2019. And I'll remind this board that 2019 is kind of our pre-pandemic, pre-COVID ridership numbers. Those were some of the highest ridership numbers that we had in the province. And you can see in 2020 the dramatic decrease and then kind of the subsequent increases in ridership levels in 2021, 2022. And then again, that white line being 2023. And you notice how that white line in around September, just before September, when we have our seasonal kind of increase with post-secondary education schools and other schools, ridership tends to spike up. But we're right along that 2019 level. So that's probably one of the first times consistently in the province that we've seen ridership at that pre-COVID level. So pretty happy to report that. And I think provincially, you might see some announcement from a BC Transit perspective. And I think it just really signifies all of the great work that our local government partners, our operating companies, BC Transit, and obviously our customers have seen as they continue to return and choose transit as an option for their transportation needs. Specifically here in the regional district, this graph is really just our fiscal years, kind of year after year. So the highest one there to the left is 2019-2020, kind of that 2019 timeframe. These are BC Transit fiscal years, so these are kind of from April 1st to March 31st. But again, just kind of a good overview of over the last 3 years, we've seen that kind of return to ridership in the regional district, which has been great. And then if I specifically look at this year and where we're at this year, you'll see that 2023 line that we've been kind of flirting with that 2019 level of ridership pretty much all year long. I didn't have the August numbers in and the September numbers in yet, so we'll see if we reached kind of that seasonal peak that we saw in 2019, but we have been consistently above 2022 levels this year. So again, I think from a region perspective and even in Powell River, we're on the conventional side of things, we're seeing these consistent increases in ridership year over year, which is great. We appreciate seeing that and appreciate again riders coming back and choosing transit as an option. So just on the transit improvement program, those directors who've seen me present this before would know this process quite intimately. We sit down with staff in kind of an April-May timeline, start talking about expansion initiatives, what feedback we're getting from the community, what other information we've gathered, and then we look to put forward some transit improvement or transit expansion initiatives and kind of try to plan those out over a 1 to 3 year term. We then bring those to the board, as we are right now, through a staff report through Mr. Devereaux and CAO. And then we seek for your commitment via an MOU to those expansion initiatives and your portion of the cost, so your local government portion of the costs. We then take those MOUs. You can think we do that across the province with all of our transit partners, our local government transit partners. And then we submit those to the province for funding for those expansion initiatives. And then, to be quite honest, we wait till their funding and budget is announced in March. As I might have mentioned, those expansion priorities, those are determined by previously not implemented priorities, any of our studies or plans that we've done, and then clearly, we work very closely with local government on any local initiatives and priorities that may pop up from year to year. So for this year, again, this shouldn't be new news to many of the directors. We have tried to push this expansion initiative forward for the last 2 years. And what this expansion initiative is to add an additional day of service for the Route 13 to Texada Island. Currently, we only service Texada Island on 1 day of the week. So obviously lots of room for improvement there. But I think one of the big things with this transit improvement initiative is the fact that we're adding an additional bus. And so, best way to describe it is we have 2 buses that are out at peak times when all of our routes are running. And we don't have any additional vehicle capacity to add additional service. So by adding the additional service day to Texada, by bringing in the additional vehicle resource, it will allow us to do other improvements throughout the system in future transit expansion priorities and initiatives, because not having that bus has a little bit handcuffed us from a flexibility perspective. So the only other point I want to make here is I did make a mistake when I sent the initial costing to staff. They neglected to add in that vehicle requirement, which comes with a lease fee. So you might see in your staff report, currently this initiative budgeted at $21,600. The updated costing that you see here is the correct costing at $37,605. And that's from last year. This board approved this same initiative at $34,000. So we have seen, just with inflationary costs from year to year, this initiative has increased by about $3,000. But I just wanted to make sure that, number one, I apologize for providing incorrect information to staff, and number two, that I make sure that this board is aware of the actual costing number that you will be moving forward in a motion, hopefully in the next little bit. So I'll jump to just our fare payment technology. So we are, and I believe I reported this last time I presented to this board, but we are moving forward with modernizing our payment system. We will move to putting on onboard validators on board buses. Customers will be able to pay still with cash if they want to, but in terms of like ticket products, we will move to a reloadable card, very similar to a Compass card that you can reload either at a vendor or online at home if you choose to do so. We'll also offer a mobile app where people will actually be able to just scan their phone on that validator. And as I mentioned, we'll always still take cash. That'll be in phase 1. In phase 2, once we've rolled this out across the province, we'll move to credit card and debit card payments, where customers will be able to just tap their debit card or their credit card in order to access the bus. Our current fare technology is quite antiquated. This is a big and I think innovative move for BC Transit and for our customers. Really what it's going to do is continue to break down some of those barriers and make it more convenient for people to be able to access transit. If you can think about it right now, you need to go to a vendor, potentially buy a day pass or your tickets to then ride the bus. Now you can do that from the comfort of your home, or if you build up a balance on your reloadable card or your app, you can just tap through the system as needed, and the system will track basically where you go in the system and make sure that your payment is optimized. So there's a lot of back end technology behind it, which actually will be very beneficial to our customers, including some route planning and other tools that will be available on the online app. So the updated timelines for this they're coming up pretty quick. We're looking to work with staff to roll out some public engagement and education coming up this fall, starting November, and then we're actually looking to move into an implementation phase sometime in December of this year. So it should be happening pretty quick once we get moving. So from a digital on demand update, so just for everyone watching this presentation, digital on demand would be transit services that are accessible by either a online application or website where you can book your ride, and then the bus will be basically dispatched to your location to pick you up and take you to your destination. We have similar services that we currently provide with the paratransit system in the on request area, as well as our handy dart services, but I would call those analog services. You need to call into the dispatch, into the office to book those rides. Digital on demand would update that with technology and a ride sharing app that would make that a little bit more seamless. So we have moved to our full pilot in British Columbia. So we posted an RFP on BC Bid for the technology provider. That has been secured. We have selected Kelowna as where we'll be launching phase 1, and that's going to happen in early of 2024. So right now we're just finalizing all the other pieces, the fleet requirements, the operations, the marketing. And what we'll do is we'll operate that service for 12 months starting in 2024. And then basically test all of that technology, test our fleet, work through any of the issues or challenges for potentially having a new service delivery type available for some time in late 2025 and into 2026. And I think that works or dovetails very well into the last 2 bullet points here. And obviously with the regional district working on their digital on-demand feasibility work, I think the timelines are lining up quite well, where BC Transit should very well be in a position to have a deeper discussion if that report does look at digital on demand and see that that is a feasible option for the region. And right now what we're doing is we're working very closely with Ms. Roberts at the regional district, as well as Left Turn, Right Turn, to assist them with any of the data and information they need on this current feasibility study that's being conducted here in the region. So we look very forward to continuing to support Left Turn, Right Turn in their work, and look forward to seeing the results of that feasibility study and where BC Transit may be able to assist the regional district in terms of transportation options moving forward. So that is it for my presentation. I will take any questions, and then I do think there is a motion for the floor.
Thanks very much, Mr. Ringma. Yeah, I'll open up for questions in just a moment. I'm particularly excited to see that ridership is up. Hopefully that keeps trending upwards now that we're beyond the pandemic, and the new fare payment systems, once they get completely in place, I think that'll remove some of the inconvenience of riding the bus now. So that's, I'm really pleased we're going in that direction. So I had Director Elliott, and I believe I saw Director McCormick, and then Director Belt.
And Director Lennox.
And Director Lennox, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I have a keen interest in digital on demand. Our Zunga bus received a Climate Action Award at UBCM this last week. It's working well. We're definitely interested in moving forward with cost sharing and incorporating it into the BC Transit, but we will talk about that over at the city side. My question is about the mobile payment options and whether, so if we have people who have disabilities that make it likely they lose stuff, I'm hoping the payment options have a way to recover things without them costing fees if they're online. And do they include monthly passes, or is it simply the reload? Like, is the reloadable like a monthly pass thing, or is that included? So my son, for example, fears to take his card with him because he thinks he'll lose it and I'll have to buy him a new one. And so that's problematic for getting on the bus. But anyway, I just wanted to ask if there was consideration for removing the barrier of having to pay more money if you lose stuff.
Yeah, no, and thank you, Director. I believe it was Director Elliott for the question. Yeah, and I did hear about UBCM and the award. So congratulations to the City of Powell River and Zunga Bus and everybody involved in that. I think it's been a great project, and obviously kind of an innovative in leading the kind of that technology front. So just getting back to your question, so the reloadable cards will be provided free of charge to anybody who wants to pick them up. They'll be able to pick them up at any of the vendors in town. So then they just need to, as I mentioned, go online or even at their vendor. They'll be able to basically upgrade the value or input value onto those cards. And the best way I can describe it, so a couple different pieces. Monthly passes, yes, they will be made available. So when you go to load your card, you'll have selection options, whether you just want to download, let's call it a $10 balance or a $20 balance onto your card and just tap as you go, or whether or not you want to choose a pass such as a monthly pass. And we've actually made a good improvement to our monthly pass. Currently right now, if you buy a monthly pass for October, it's only valid from October 1st to October 31st. What will happen now in the new monthly pass system is if I go and buy that pass on October 15th, it'll be good till November 15th. So it's actually moving away from a monthly, quote unquote, monthly pass to a 30-day pass. No matter when you purchase it, it'll be good for 30 days from the time you purchase it. So that's actually an improvement over the current kind of monthly pass, moving to a 30-day pass. So yes, then the other option, as I mentioned, is when you have a reloadable card, you can give it a balance. And the system, I guess the best way to describe it, if I tap in at Lund, and I want to get all the way to Sultry Bay, when I change buses at the transit exchange, the system will know that I've already tapped in, and it won't charge me for that second leg because I'm still within that transfer window. So there's that back-end technology that just, again, makes it a little bit more convenient for passengers. But yes, on the accessibility front, for sure, I think we've looked at all of those different scenarios, including still taking cash on board, providing free reloadable fare cards, and then working with our vendors to make sure that we're getting the education and information out that we need to customers as we transition to this new system.
So are those reloadable fare cards similar to BC ferries in that you register them for a certain person, and if you lose it, you can transfer it to your new card?
Yes, so basically what you'll get is almost a ID called a transit ID that you can move from one card to the next.
Okay, thank you.
Director McCormick.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Rob, first I want to thank you and BC Transit for staying with the Texada expansion project. I know we've had a lot of full loads this year going over on our Thursday bus. And so this will be well used. I really guarantee it. So I do have a question though, and that is, there's been a strong request from the community that if there is a second day, that it could be on Tuesday. Is that possible?
Thank you for your question, Director McCormick. I know Texaid is near and dear to your heart, so that's outstanding. Appreciate the support. Yes, so what we'll be able to do is once we have this approved and then we get the provincial funding approved, then we'll sit down with Patrick and the operations team as well as our operations team, and we'll look at the schedule. Without diving into it deeply at this point, when you mentioned Tuesdays, my general impression would be by adding that additional bus, we would have the flexibility to accommodate on Tuesdays. And again, I think what we would also look at doing at that time is we may look at any other opportunities to, I'll use the technical term of rejig the schedule to look for other efficiencies. So currently right now, I know the Sunshine Coast Connector mentions that Thursdays are a very popular day on the Sultry Bay side of things. So I think what we'll do is we'll sit down as a team and we'll really look at the ways to manage the schedule, make any small changes that we can to the schedule, and try to accommodate, the board's request for Tuesdays if that is requested.
Thank you.
Director Dallas.
Yeah, I just wonder about the Sultry Bay route, and I wonder if you have any breakout numbers for the ridership on that route and whether they're going up and down, and if there's any possibility to expand that to actually a true intercity service where people can seamlessly get on a bus in one city and go to another one, like Gibson's or Seashell or Horseshoe Bay.
Yeah, thank you, Director Doe, for the question. Yes, regional transit continues to be a hot topic, not only on the Sunshine Coast, but also in lots of other areas, including rural areas. I know the province is looking at and reviewing some of those options across the province as well. What I can speak to, and I don't have the exact numbers for the Sultry Bay run, but I can get those and through staff get those to the board so that they can review those. I kind of used an aggregate number of all of the routes in one. But what I would say is, yeah, I think BC Transit recognizes that there's still work to be done and a desire to look at a more seamless interregional route between the Powell River region and your regional district and the Sunshine Coast Regional District. What we know right now is we're working closely with the Sunshine Coast Connector to try to make sure that we're able to provide some synergies in terms of our schedule and the Sunshine Coast connector schedule. But ultimately, what we do need is we need on the Sunshine Coast Regional District side some movement there to look at providing public transit services further north than Half Moon Bay. I do know the SCRD has had some discussions about doing a feasibility study on that route, and I think that would be the real game changer for the residents on the Powell River side, is that if we can fill that gap on the Sunshine Coast Regional District side, then BC Transit would work very closely with both local governments to try to align a schedule that would make that happen. So I don't have an immediate answer for you on that front, but I do know every time that I'm meeting with the Sunshine Coast Regional District, I'm also expressing this board's desire to continue to improve those kind of inter-regional connections, and I think the province has recognized that, and hopefully there'll be some work coming out of the province in the near future on that front as well.
Just if I can just have one follow-up comment. Seems to me that there should be a structure that can involve planning for transit for more than one regional district at the same time. To have a transit authority, for example, that would include the Sea to Sky, the Sunshine Coast, and the Kitsap Regional District seems to make eminent sense to me, and that would be a lot better to get people in the same room working on the plan rather than trying to do it in 3 different places.
Thank you very much. And Director Lennox.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate your submission here. A couple of things. I'm a recovering transit driver, just to open disclosure for the city of Fall River, so I understand some of this. And I'm just really excited for Text Data. I think it'll be a major improvement for them, so really looking forward to it. Couple of questions. I read the report and your submission. The expansion isn't confirmed. This is basically a necessary requirement, obviously. It looks like it's a 3-year agreement, but what then? So is it included in normal programming? How do we sort of make sure we're not kind of having to redress this again, or do we do a reassessment? And then I'll do a follow-up. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Director Lennox. Appreciate your service when you're on the road. I've done a couple bus rodeos, so I've driven buses in the parking lot, and I have a newfound respect for what our drivers do out there on the road. So, to answer your question specifically, yes. So sorry. Basically, through the BC Transit Act, how the funding model works is we need local government approval for their share of the cost first. That's the gate that opens to then allow us to go to the province and ask for their matching funding for a transit expansion. So that's the process that you see there with that 3-year MOU. I apologize. The 3-year MOU is usually, all that's saying is typically we try to plan out 1, 2, or 3 years in advance. It does not mean that once you approve this Text Ada expansion that it's only a 3-year expansion. Once you approve it, if we get provincial funding, it goes into your total schedule and stays within that budget. So apologies if that wasn't made clear in that report. And I think what we're going to try to do is the next time I come in front of this board, we'll likely be to discuss some new options, because hopefully we're going to get the Text Ada option this year, and then next time we come on the board, we'll probably sit and discuss a little bit more of kind of a next 3-year plan, and that's what we intend to go to, is with those MOUs. Usually you would see 3 years of expansions. So we're just doing some planning work behind the scenes right now. We're going to wait to see how your digital on-demand feasibility study works, and then I think we'll bring those together and come to the board with some more kind of short and medium term options for discussion.
Thank you. Just the follow-up is related to that. So you've mentioned an additional physical asset of a bus. I would assume it's the rural transit type of a vehicle, not the full bus, and that it does takes away a hurdle for that future expansion kind of problem that existed where you didn't have the asset. Is that sort of what you were getting at?
Yeah, and so basically what happens is with a bus system, we would have in this bus system, we would have actually 3 buses, 2 that are out at peak. So when we have all of our services out in the peak morning and afternoon times, we have 2 buses on the road. We have the 3rd bus there in case something breaks down. So that's what we call a spare bus. So right now, when we have all those buses on the road, all we have is a spare bus. We don't like to deploy that spare bus out in regular service, because if something breaks down, we have no backup. So this additional bus resource that you see here now would give us 3 buses that we could operate at peak times and still have that 1 spare bus in case one of those buses breaks down.
Understood, and unfortunately, it does. I've lived it. Thank you.
They do. They drive a lot of kilometers.
Okay, Director Gisborne.
Oh, thank you. One of the challenges we have is, being locally elected officials is, balancing costs and services, and is the juice worth the squeeze, and all that kind of stuff. And, public transit is a great asset, and it's something that we need to move, more in that direction. Myself, I'm a pig farmer, so I know I can't take my pigs on the bus, but at the same time, when I'm stuck in traffic trying to get the pigs to market, part of me thinks it's like, okay, how are there so many folks on the road that don't need to be on the road? So public transportation, all in favor. But when talking with constituents, one of the concerns that is raised is the cost of the service, and taking a look at it's page 37 of our agenda, where transit improvement program estimated annual total costs of $68,000 with a municipal share of $37,000, but an estimated annual revenue of $1,310. And I'm just wondering about like BC Transit's like business case model, and like, is there like a population density, or like what other factors come into play to try and, make these systems more efficient? Would there be like a land use kind of thing that, we could take into consideration when we're talking about OCPs? Because, those are big costs, and of course, nothing's really getting cheaper these days. So yeah, that's my concern. But this current proposal, I'm in support of it. I'm just wondering about, as we get into future proposals, how we can, because it's a big complicated system. So that's my question, I guess.
No problem. Thank you, Director Gisborne. Appreciate your comments. So yeah, just again for clarity's sake, when you look at that proposed expansion initiative and the costs, so we estimate the annual hours. We estimate the vehicles that are required. When you see the estimated annual revenue, that's actually the estimated annual revenue that we think that initiative will add incrementally to the total revenue of the system. So I know when you look at the 68,000 versus 1,300 in revenue, it seems like, whoa, that's a pretty big gap. But that's only $1,300 annual revenue that we think this additional day of service to Texada will provide. We still have all of the other revenue that the transit service provides, and of course, local government retains 100% of that revenue to offset the costs involved. When you see the $68,000 in cost, that's the total cost. Of course, BC Transit through the province of BC picks up about half of that cost, leaving the regional district with that net municipal share of $37,600. So I just kind of address that. And then number two, when you're asking about efficiencies, and yes, all of those things can help in terms of infrastructure and routing. I think even the work that the regional district is doing through the digital on demand feasibility study and looking at, does the regional district move forward with a digital on demand service only? Do they do a hybrid service where we're doing digital on demand in certain areas and relying on the key kind of conventional fixed route for another portion? I think, BC Transit looks at all of those different ways to try to find the most efficient way to deliver service within the city. I'll use the example of the town center exchange. We have not only the City of Powell River's buses, but also the regional district buses all coming to one central exchange so that people can transfer from bus to bus to get from north to south, east to west. That's quite efficient way to operate the system. And I think our planners, our schedulers are always working with City of Powell River staff and regional district staff to really try to flesh out what are the best ways that we can operationalize these routes to provide the most efficient service we can. Because we're not only talking about regional district dollars, we're also talking about provincial dollars as well.
Yeah, follow-up?
Yeah, quick follow-up. Very happy you mentioned the town center exchange. There's a lot of folks in the community that do like the park and ride for things like Blackberry Festival and other community events. It was recently brought to my attention that the town center mall in that north parking lot is looking to do an expansion of their facilities. And that is private property for that parking lot. So our community right now is going to be faced with, we're still going to have these community events, we're still going to have these activities, but that parking lot that we have historically used for people doing this park and ride to go to all these events, from what I'm hearing, we're not going to be able to rely on just going and parking in a big lot anymore because there's going to be a potential expansion there. So I guess my question is, when we do start having, future events in the community, is there any plans for, like a park and ride at another location? Because, we can't really rely on going and parking on someone's private property and then going off to an event. And I think when that actually does happen, there's going to be a big challenge, and I think it can be a great detriment to the good work that's been happening for these park and ride initiatives for so many of our community events. So I'm just wondering, I know that's probably between BC Transit and the City of Powell River, but it does affect the whole community. So I'm just wondering, is there other locations that are being looked at?
Yeah, thanks again for the follow-up. The town center mall and the development there has been a topic of many discussions. I have personally sat in on discussions with the City of Powell River and the developer of the mall. First step first is just our mall exchange and where our mall exchange will be located, and making sure that it doesn't negatively impact the transit service and our timing points and our schedule. So I think there's going to be some more updates that will come through the City of Powell River. So I don't want to speak to it too much here in this forum, but I would say that we have had some good ongoing dialogue with the developer from a transit perspective, and I personally feel good about the next steps forward with that development from a transit exchange perspective, which is, as I mentioned, kind of phase one for us is the most important thing, because we currently provide services. Every one of our services goes through that exchange. In terms of longer term and park and ride planning, again, BC Transit does get involved and can get involved through the Ministry of Transportation in some park and ride facilities. I would love to see the day in Powell River and in the region where we need a large park and ride because everybody's coming to a central location, parking their buses and going out using transit. And I think that's just, as you mentioned, an ongoing discussion with the City of Powell River about what are the best next steps if we do become constricted on parking at within the developer's parking lot. So haven't had those discussions yet, but glad you've raised it, and I'll make sure to bring that up with my colleagues, my partners at the City of Powell River as well.
Thank you. That's my question, and I just wanted to bring it up so that we don't run into like the 11th hour and then there's a community event and suddenly everyone's bringing their cars because they can't park and ride. So that's it for me.
Appreciate it. I think I saw Mr. Devereaux's hand up there. You have a comment?
Yes, Chair, if I may, through the chair, I just wanted to talk about the revenue for the Texada run. So the board consider the complications of going to Texada as well with the ferries. So there's only 2 runs per day. And if you compare that to the 5 runs on the Stillwater route per day, you can see how collecting fares is a little problematic as there's only 2 runs.
Okay, thank you for that input. Director Paul.
Thank you, Chair. Just briefly, I want to thank you, Mr. Ringla, for informative presentation as always. It was really good to see. And I'm really happy about the Texada service expansion. I won't even ask about when you're going to bring a bus to Lasqueti Island. But I would like to bring attention back to the motion that's on the table. And I just like to say I think we should move forward with it. I support the motion to sign the agreement and to reaffirm our commitment to the service expansion to Texada. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much. Seeing no other hands, no other questions, Mr. Ringma, thank you very much again for joining us. It's always very informative, and it's a pleasure having you in the boardroom.
Thanks again for the opportunity.
And or personally. Okay, so is there any other discussion on the motion that we have had moved and seconded? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed? Motion carries. Great. Moving on to number 9 and 10, Chair's report, Director's report. I'm just going to have them combined, and that's okay, especially in the interest of time. I'm going to try to keep it quick, and I would kind of suggest that everybody else try to as well. We started an hour late, so it'd be good to get through this. September 8th, participated in an online housing roundtable with the other members of the board, a consultant, and members of our planning staff. I thought it was really productive, and I look forward to the next one. On September 11th, library trustees meeting. We voted to approve the renewal of the current service agreement with the QRD. And on a similar note, in October, the trustees are going to be meeting with representatives of the Tla'amin Nation to open dialogue about a service agreement with the nation. This is probably more of interest for anybody watching, but there are 3 trustees whose terms are ending this year. I believe at least one, if not 2 of them, come to the end of their allowable time on the board. So if somebody watching is interested in joining the library trustees, I encourage you to visit the Powell River Public Library website and type, quote, become a library trustee in the search bar. Now you have to do it quickly because applications are only open until tomorrow at about 5 o'clock, I think. So
all day.
You got all day today and most of the day tomorrow. September 17th to the 22nd, we had the UBCM. And this is where I'm going to talk just about one session. And if anybody wants to talk it, I try to limit it because not only is it in the interest of time, but also if somebody goes and tells about everything they've done, then they take away all the stuff from everybody else to talk about. So we had a lot of good sessions. We had 2 meetings with ministers. One seemed really productive. One was less so, but you never know where these things are going to lead. The session I'm going to mention was one of the first that I went to, which is a Fire Risk Reduction and Fire Safety Act with Brian Godlinton, the fire commissioner. I think we've discussed this briefly, but initially regional districts, along with municipalities, were going to be required to monitor public buildings for fire safety. They have since pulled that back and now only planning on going ahead with inspections and investigations. This will still cause headaches for communities such as ours with little zoning, no building inspections, no building permits. And these issues are being looked into because trust me, there are a number of electoral area directors that brought up these kind of concerns during the session. So as far as I know, nothing is finalized yet. I imagine some modifications may still be coming. So, but yeah. Prior to being rolled out on a grand scale, I imagine things will still be fine-tuned a bit. And they said there will be a lot of support from the fire commissioner's office. Yesterday, there was the open house regarding the Myrtle Pond capital inclusion charge. I thought it was really well run, very informational. A lot of people were there, a lot of questions asked, and I felt everybody walked away quite satisfied with the information they've received. Tomorrow evening, I'll attend the Lift Community Services AGM being held at the Sailor Center in the Tla'amin Village. On the 29th, I'll be traveling to London to attend the announcement of increased connectivity in our region, which I imagine will make a lot of people happy. Not that I'm attending, but that there'll be better connectivity. And on the 29th, I will be at Center Ice for the Powell River Kings' first game of the season. Apparently, the mayor and I will be facing off for a ceremonial puck drop. I'm glad it's not real because if it were, I imagine at least one of us would walk away injured. Anyway, that's all I've got. Director Dowd.
I'm speculating now.
Yeah.
Anyway, should be good. I just bought my season's tickets for the King game.
Oh.
I'm looking forward to them. The schedule because the Kings were smart enough to, it seems, to schedule all their games on Friday and Saturday nights, so they won't be interfering with regional district board meetings and city meetings, and I'm really happy.
Smart move.
So UBCM, I guess, was the highlight of the month for everybody. Involved rejigging all of the meeting dates for the regional district and the city. And it's just an amazing opportunity to network with others from all around the province and get different points of view on what's happening in the political landscape. And every minute of it, I thought that I was there was very valuable. It was a learning experience and move towards better government throughout the entire province. I think I'm not going to go into details on it. I might at a city council meeting where we talk about the many ministers meetings we had, but that's one of the key things I want to point out is when we go there, we do a number of things, but one is we get these 15-minute speed meetings with cabinet ministers, which are probably the best opportunity for regional district government persons involved, the director, to actually have a voice and speak directly to government and sometimes get direct answers back. And it's actually a very useful thing for the community to have that face-to-face interaction. So I'm going to leave that there. I'm thinking, I thought the housing update for all the electoral areas and the housing needs was interesting, but it still talks about what's happening in the entire area. And I think housing still is on the forefront of a lot of people's ideas. So I'll just keep it short for that.
All done. Great. I had the ministerial meetings. I think they're really valuable. Man, I have a lot of sympathy for the ministers themselves and their staff because that's a lot of meetings to take over the course of just a few days. It's a good one.
Thank you. Let's see. On the September the 8th, I attended the housing needs session, which the chair recently mentioned. I thought it was a very good session. We got into some of the details and some of the issues around housing and some of the misconceptions and you know, how can we align our priorities with policy. But it was you know, it was a workshop, so we didn't make any decisions, but we'll see what the consultant comes back with. Let's see. Oh, yes. And of course, UBCM, which I know love is a strong word, but I absolutely love attending UBCM. One of the sessions I attended was on Monday. I did the agricultural tour. I know no one else on our board attended, but I was gratefully joined by our CAO, who, as I understand, has some farming background from being back in Alberta. And it was very interesting to hear various farmers and agricultural communities and some of the issues they're having. Mostly we're hearing things around water and, you know, some of the different perspectives. I was also interested to learn that I think what was the second largest agricultural economic driver is actually flowers. The first one is dairy and the second one was flowers. So when they talk about, you know, food security around agriculture, it's not just food security. But it was also quite interesting to hear how, you know, some farmers are on municipal water, some farmers are not on municipal water. And we heard from a fellow who was a cranberry farmer that while his crops are not the early ripening cranberries, there are some crops that are the early ripening and they are not allowed to use the water to actually flood their field and harvest the cranberries. And that is, I was just wondering, like, what do they expect them to pick them like by hand with tweezers? It just doesn't make sense to me. But the convention itself was excellent. It's always good to network with other local government elected officials. You know, sometimes it's around drinks, sometimes it's around the dinner table. I had a very interesting conversation with a mayor of another community that they're looking at actually removing building permits in their municipality. So he wanted to ask me, you know, how the area looks out here. And I thought, well, seems okay. And then on the Thursday night, I attended the banquet. And there was something I wanted to reference that what happened there. We had Steve Patterson from the CBC as a comedian. And when he was giving his presentation, he said, you know what? I think you guys take a long time to make a decision. And he said, I think I got it figured out. And he put up the resolution about extraordinary resolution to amend the UBCM bylaws to change the resolution submission deadline. And it's about this long. And he says, I got it figured out. And he pushes a button and it changes to the deadline for resolutions is now June 15th. Good talk. And it was, everyone had a good laugh and, you know, had some discussions in around our tables of, you know, how can we expedite some of our processes, because sometimes we just get all tangled up in a process and a procedure when really the question before us is the deadline June 30th or June 15th. Okay. So that was great. And then as the chair referenced, we had the Myrtle Pond bylaw public engagement. I attended both sessions. The first one was very well attended. I think we actually went over the 2-hour mark. And then when we had the second session, we lasted about 45 minutes. And I have to give a big thank you to our staff, especially Michelle Jones and Linda Greenan. You know, they answered the questions very well. They kind of cleared up some of the, you know, some of the muddied waters, made it clear. And one of the things I was hearing from a lot of folks in the area was, you know, their interest in joining the water system appears to have dried up when they were actually seeing the actual cost. And myself, because of all the questions and asks about water, I actually ended up having to go into my filing cabinets and, you know, refreshing my memory on it and gathering up all the, you know, the old studies around water in Area B, and they go all the way back to 1989. But it was a good conversation starter, and I'm sure we're going to hear more discussion on water because it's a pressing issue, even though now we have an atmospheric river. So I think that's it for me. Thank you.
I was just going to ask you about the farmers market, though.
Yes. The fall fair. I had to leave UBCM early and fly back on Friday morning because I was coordinating the fall fair. And this was the first year that we did away with the gate fee, which used to be $5, and we went completely by donation because of the concerns around income inequality in the community. The first day was quite wet, quite rainy, but everyone had a smile on their face, and the Scottish pipe band said, you know, this is typical Scottish weather. And then on Sunday, the weather was beautiful, and we're still, you know, counting and hearing the results. But based on the Saturday's, you know, intake and counting of numbers, it appears that we actually did better doing it by donation than actually doing it by the gate fees. So I and others are so impressed by this community and their generosity, that those that can were able to donate, and those that couldn't afford were still able to show up and participate. And there was lots of kids there. I think it was maybe 30% of all the people there were actually, you know, under the age of 12, which was just wonderful to see. And then the fall fair ended at 5, and at 6 o'clock, the storm rolled in. And so beautiful sunny day. And then, hey, fall is here. That was it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the update. It's a nice feel-good story about the fall fair.
Yeah.
Dr. Elliott.
Thank you, Chair. So I, like everyone else, went to UBCM and participated in as much as I could. My schedule had events packed on top of one another. I had to leave some sessions to attend others. So I wanted to talk a little bit about one of the meetings we had, was to promote Powell River as a PACT location. So PACT is a peer assisted care team. The province is funding some in the province as pilots. They're looking to choose 4 more communities. The jury's still out on which of those communities would be chosen. We tried to make the case that our community could really would not only make a good place for a pilot. We also had the people, the coordination, the heart, all of the stuff that would be required to make it work. Peer assisted care teams have peers along with a healthcare worker responding to welfare checks or health checks instead of RCMP people's when it's appropriate to do so. And they require a little bit of support and funding in order to make those work. So there's a QR code on here. I don't know if you can see it, but all of the people in the community can help us by going to this cmha.bc.ca, recommend your community, and writing in that you recommend our community so that we can show community support for a PACT here in Cathat. So, and if anybody would like more information or help with that, Councillor Trina Isaacson is doing that, and you can just email her at her regular city email and get her help. So I just wanted to point that out. I also attended Savary Green Shores on Savary Island the day after our last regional meeting. It was amazing. We got to go meet lots of people and there were a lot of contractors really interested in making sure they're doing the right thing for the shores and keeping the erosion and designing things in a way that help with shores and sand and not eroding your island away. And and Savary is vulnerable because there's a lot of sand there, but actually sand's good. But so I went and attended that. It was a wonderful, beautiful day. I did our CAT just a few days just on Monday of this week. Our community advisory action team, for the opioid crisis, it's our community action team. It's got Vancouver Coastal Health, it's got pharmacists, it's got fire department, it's got the ambulance people, it's got all of the people working on the agonist therapies, the people who run the safe injection sites, the people who run the supportive housing. It's got the what we call Sustain, which is the group that organizes some of our peers in the community. It's got local government people on it. We had in attendance at our community advisory team meeting on Monday, 51 people from our community working really hard on this initiative. And that's an amazing amount of numbers. I also went last summer to Local Leaders United, which is put on by our province level community action team, and has people from all across the province. And most communities are struggling to have a functioning community action team. Ours is the best functioning community action team that I can figure out from talking to all of those people. Our last community action team in the summer, we had a guest from downtown Vancouver, downtown East Side. The doctor who runs their IOUT there came to our CAT to learn from us. That's how well we're doing in our region coordinating responses. So since we started our testing in April, which is now available here in Philpott region, for the first time since the beginning of this crisis, has had no fatalities. So that tells you not only do we have the service, but we are able to reach out, make sure the people who need it are getting it, and it is helping. So I'm a little emotional about that. We've been running this CAT since 2018. That is the first time that we could put out a real positive number like that. It's super worth, celebrating that. The community action team has facilitated and has organized a fentanyl forum on October 23rd that will be at the Evergreen Theater, and it's intended to facilitate a conversation with anybody who wants to come that's from the community, get your questions answered, ask your questions, provide lots of information around the response to this overdose crises that we've been living in since 2016. So I encourage people to come. That's at the Evergreen Theater on October 23rd. So that's the CAT. Sorry, it was a good CAT meeting. I also attended our Vancouver Island Coastal Communities Climate Leaders Steering Committee meeting yesterday. We will be organizing a session to go with AVICC next spring. I've put myself on the organizing committee for that event, so stay tuned for more decisions around that. Our focus for this term that we're all in office is to, I want to go get this right. I wrote it down, just give me a sec. The emphasis is on relationship building and coordination between our region and our regional staff. So we're trying to increase the ability to network and coordinate the climate action work that local governments are doing at the staff level. So there is staff meetings as well that the co-chairs go to from our group to talk to staff. And the next staff networking opportunity on the climate action front is on October 3rd. And there's an email that I've circulated through my CAO that if any staff wish to participate and they think they have work that's related to climate action in our region, they would be more than welcome at that networking opportunity. They can get how to register through the CAO and attend that on October 3rd. That's my report. Sorry I was long, but I did lots.
You were very excited about it. No, that's okay. Great. Thanks very much. And I'm going to go to the next Lund resident, Director Lennox. I know he's not in Lund, but that's okay.
No, I am not. I'm in Cranbrook, BC. Yeah, lots going on. I'll try to be as quick as I can here. So I also attended the Clean Shores Level 1 workshop with Director Elliott on Savary. It was a UVic course, and there's a couple of levels. I highly recommend it for anybody who's interested. It wasn't what we expected, or what I expected. And it was actually real concrete solutions for people who are struggling with properties that are on shores that are being impacted by, erosion, or working with their neighborhoods on the same topic, and really not saying you can't do anything and just you have to let nature take its course. There are things that you can do that accomplish the objective, but are a more natural and sort of what they call the hybrid solution. Very cool. I encourage you to check it out on UVic's website. And if you ever get a chance, participate. Very relevant. Part of a environment and climate change, climate action and awareness fund that came, and we used that, and the QRD was credited during the course. Very diverse group, contractors, locals, environmentalists, us, right? So it was pretty cool. September 8th, Housing Needs Virtual Roundtable Summit. A couple interesting things. Area A's population spike there. What was it, 15% or so? Just interesting how the last few years has affected population in our areas. But again, at UBCM, we definitely learned same needs across the province. I mean, everybody's seeing the housing stresses. The 14th, Lund Community Society Building Committee, still working towards the Northside Recreation Center. It had been a while since the group met. They're actually meeting tomorrow with Mr. Schwab, so thanks for that. Can't be there, but they're continuing to work towards what I believe is the RFP for that, so looking forward to that. Speeding in the neighborhood there in Lund, I was mentioning that last month, and people reaching out and really concerned. It's trailed off now that summer's kind of gone, immediately gone like a light switch, but I did manage to, working with Moti, but that takes time, right? And so I did manage to get a generous donation of a speed sign from Paper Excellence there. Somebody you may know obtained a nice digital speed sign that can be moved around the community in Area A to help people remind them of their speed as they approach these areas. So Lund Community Society will take ownership of that, and hopefully you'll see it and it'll remind you to slow down when you're heading around the area. And hopefully, maybe we can lend it out to the other areas if you have a need. If Moti won't step up, we'll do something about it. Same thing, clearing debris and water stuff all over the roads, our ways. I mean, there's a lot of damage going on too, so we're trying to work with them to maintain those things. SIMAC, that's our Marine Advisory Committee on Savary. I did miss that. That was a scheduling error on my part, but a few things of note. 5-year lease at North Point, what used to be Indian Point, was confirmed. So that was good progress. Now there's some work to understand what that means. The consultant's report's due at the end of October for the main Wharf area there. That'll also be very telling on what we're faced with for the future. The fire suppression project proposal that we've seen, interesting. SIMAC's obviously very interested in that. And a recommendation to increase the service parcel tax. So we'll be looking at some information on that as a group coming up, I think. The UBCM was cool. It was my first one, and all new to me. You've heard from the other directors, but municipal affairs, land, water, and all improvement districts, very interesting. The discussion with the RCMP command staff about Texada's policing and the detachment there was very good, I thought, and that went well, and they were very receptive. And I wish to express my condolences to the force for their recent loss. My brother took me on a tour of the downtown east side right before that meeting, so a lot of things gelled for me. We remember there's people involved here. So we met with Minister Fleming. That was cool, about BC ferries and the Lang Creek Bridge. Again, good presentation by the chair on the bridge, and it made more sense to me, and I think it made sense to their staff. So hopefully we can get that one done for sure. JEDI ministry, the JEDI there, they have a lot of things. Minister Bailey and the Islands Economic Trust funding. I think that's same request from many groups across the province. So we added our voice to that one. Emergency management did a session on that and the local government impacts that are kind of downloaded to us as local government. And water management was also a related subject that's quite relevant to us. Gen 911 and the changes that are coming up, very cool technology coming. But I did, Director Fall, I wanted you to know that they mentioned that there's 99% of the province is covered. And I did stand up and remind them that there is 1% that we represent out there too. So I wanted you to know that. And then finally, the Port Authority tour, Director Elliott was on that one. It was super cool. On this ferry, they took us around all their facilities around the harbor. Super interesting, right up close to all these major facilities and what a true industry, powerhouse in the province. Thanks.
And some lists way bigger than the ones I run.
Thanks, Director Lennox. It was really great to hear from you and from Director Elliott that the Green Shores program is so well attended by the community, because if you don't have community buy-in, then these things just don't have much success, or chance of success, I should say. And it was nice meeting your brother down in the city at the restaurant. He staged a fake arrest of Director Lennox in the
Yeah,
restaurant.
there was almost a takedown there. Yeah.
Yeah. It got ugly there for a few minutes, but Director McCormick.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. First, I'll talk a bit about the Texada stuff, and then I'll get into UBCM. On Texada on September the 2nd, I met with the Gillies Bay Internet Society people who are quite concerned about the delay in approval of their location for a landing hub for the Connected Coast project. So I was able to get a hold of the provincial officials who are looking after that, and hopefully we've got the two of them talking, and that should hopefully be resolved. On the 3rd of September was a huge benefit at Shelter Point Park for the 2 volunteer fire departments. It was a barbecue, there was a mariachi band, and there was probably 200 to 300 people there. It was just packed, and beautiful sunny day, and they sold right out of food. So great benefit for the 2 departments. On the 8th, with others, I attended the virtual housing needs roundtable, and that was really informative. On the 12th, I hosted a regional district discussion night, which is a semi-annual kind of town hall type meeting that I host here on Texada. And so I was most interested to know what people's thoughts were about potentially losing our RCMP detachment, which formed the basis of the presentation that was made subsequently at UBCM. But also people were asking about things like the concession operator for 2024, what's happening with that. They're asking about the bike path, what's happening with that, and some concerns about mining in the watershed. So it was a really informative and great discussion. Everyone sits in a circle and gets equal opportunity to talk. So very, very productive for me to host these things, to know what people are thinking. So on the 14th was the Texada Island Recreation Commission, and thanks go out to Rick Jones for donating an amount of material that's going to be used for upkeep on the Emily Lake Trail. And also there was a discussion about the condition of some key regional district facilities that are stewarded by the commission, and one of which is the Texada Community Hall, which has some ventilation and rot issues that have been going on really for years. And a lot of efforts been made by staff to try to remediate that, but there's only so much remediation that can be done when the damage is already there. So, and the old school is the other facility, which houses the library, the preschool, and the senior center, and it sits on a floodplain, so there are some issues with that as well. On the 17th was the last farmers market on Texada, and our little mini fan fall there with pie eating contest and zucchini weigh-in and all of that. And it was lots of music, and it was lots of decorations. It was really well attended and lots of fun. Sorry to see the market go, because it's always such a social event on Sundays in the summertime. Yesterday, I attended the Tourism Powell River Board meeting, and their visitations during August were way up, a whopping 19% over August of the previous year. And for the very first time, they sold out of t-shirts. So that was pretty amazing for the visitor center. They reordered long sleeve ones for the winter, so you'll be able to get yours. And they've also applied for a $10,000 grant through Indigenous Tourism, an Indigenous Tourism Fund through Destination BC, for a carving and installation of a welcome figure pole at the visitor center. So I really hope they get their grant. So moving on to UBCM, I guess if there's one session that really stands out for me, I think it was on the Thursday, and Rob Fleming, the Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure, spoke, as did Josie Osborne, who was Minister of Mines, Energy, Low Carbon Innovation, etc. And they were talking about the BC Clean Transportation Action Plan, which is going to be released toward the end of this year. They talked about a lot of active transportation grants that are out there for projects. So I hope staff are keeping an eye on those. I'm sure they are. And also rebates regarding the public electric vehicle charging stations. So all that coming up in their transportation plan, which is really exciting. The meetings I found were incredibly productive. Certainly the one with the RCMP, where I was making the case for maintaining the Texada detachment, which is an area of low population and low crime rate, and they only have limited resources. So we know the RCMP are under great pressure nationally for staffing. However, there's compelling arguments. If you have to deploy officers from Powell River, that's a huge delay in response time. Plus, when there's storms, and that happens with an increasing frequency every winter, the ferries don't run, the power is off, a police boat isn't going to make it over either. So chances are there may be nobody coming. Paramedics, for example, cannot enter a premises where there has been domestic abuse or elder abuse, for example, until the police have deemed that it's safe to do so. But if there's no police coming, what do? In the case of a fire, the fire departments are great at fighting fires, but they can only do so much. They can't block the road, redirect the traffic, do crowd control, and fight the fire at the same time. So there's some very compelling reasons for keeping our Texada detachment. And it was a very productive meeting, and I thank the RCMP for giving us that time. On the other side of things, that evening I went to the Craft Cannabis Association reception, and was really interested to hear some of the issues that they're facing. One of which is that the Agricultural Land Commission, for example, recognizes cannabis production as a bona fide farm use or bona fide farm product. However, BC assessment does not. So they're having great trouble trying to get farm status through BC assessment, even though the Agricultural Land Commission supports it. So they're going through a battle with that. I was able to talk to the BC assessment fellow at the trade show, told him of this concern, and he emailed me the legislation governing what they can grant as farm status and what they can't. So I forwarded that to the craft cannabis people. So hopefully everybody is now, working with the same information. I was really interested to go to the meeting about the Lund water system. I think Director Lennox made a very compelling argument, and it was it sort of evolved a bit into a short discussion on improvement districts and whether or not they're worth having or not worth having. And of course, provincial governments of all political stripes have wanted to get rid of improvement districts for years and years. And as was told to us, it's because they can't really tell the ones that are working well from the ones that are not working well. So I suggested perhaps a matrix system would help solve that problem, and then they could identify what worked well and what didn't. So it was also great to be at the MOTI presentation with Minister Fleming. That was the meeting, and Chair Brander did a great job of explaining not only the Lang Creek Bridge issue, but BC Ferries and our displeasure with BC Ferries. And I know we echo the sentiments of so many other coastal communities in throwing up our hands in frustration, because this is what we live with day in and day out. So I was able to add one point, and that was that I was asking BC Ferries to have schedules which reflected the actual time that it takes to unload and reload a full capacity load of cars. So hopefully they will put that into consideration. At the trade show, I chatted with folks at BC Hydro regarding electric vehicle charging stations, and I'm passing information on to staff about that. And finally, I was very pleased that both of the resolutions that the QRD put forward were passed regarding long-term sustainable funding for libraries and recognizing First Nations under Section 90 of the Community Charter. So that's it, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I can only imagine some of the comments that were made at your meeting on Texada concerning the RCMP detachment. I agree with you. I think that meeting went quite well down at the UBCM. So hopefully hopefully we see some fruit from that. On to Director Paul, last but not least.
Thank you, Chair. August the 24th was a Coastal Invasive Species Committee meeting, and the relevant information for the board is that there will be a fall forum and a field tour held in Qualicum Beach on October the 18th, and it will speakers will feature representatives from the Ministry of Forests, First Nations, the District of Saanich, as well as the QRD Manager of Operational Services, Patrick Devereaux. So that'll be great to hear him speak. October the 26th, I met with Paul Cummings from the Townsite Jazz Festival on Lasqueti when he was passing by. And in order to discuss the potential for a venue on Lasqueti as part of the 2024 Townsite Jazz Festival. And there seems to be a lot of interest for that. The organizing the Townsite Jazz Festival seems to have lined up a Juno Award-winning bass player who has some ties to Lasqueti, and has also talked about the potential for a high school jazz group that might play as part of the earlier performance for that. So that would be really great to link into that. On September the 11th, the Lasqueti Ferry Committee met with the manager of Western Pacific Marine and the BC Ferries staff member who oversees the service contract. The service, as you know, has been not great. On my way to UBCM, I had to take a water taxi along with about 20 other people due to a cancellation for medical problems. That cost the Lasqueti public approximately $900 extra. On Monday, all runs were canceled due to electrical problems, with no makeup runs on Tuesday or today because of the challenge with repairing them. The backup ferry couldn't be put on the run because that was the backup ferry. The main ferry is in dry dock and is due back in a few weeks for retrofit, but we have not yet received any certainty that there will be a third crew member available to resume full capacity. So people are paying for water taxis for these increased canceled runs, and the financial cost is very, very significant for some people who have financial difficulties. I believe the operator is trying to resolve issues and communication has improved, but we are yet to see service levels improve. And there's a lot of concern heading into the winter season. And I was glad to have 1 minute with Minister Fleming at UBCM. I think he is well aware of the issues, and there's limits to what the minister can do. But I think the number of letters being sent out by Lasqueti residents is significant, as you might guess. So every party related to ferries is aware because they're receiving letters. On September 16th, the Vancouver Island Regional Library adopted its 2024 budget unanimously. Out of the total budget of $34 million, local government levies will contribute $32.5 million, and that represents a 3.4% increase. So a modest increase for a fairly large budget. The board also adopted a new reserves contribution and reporting framework to better align with local government practice. One of the challenges, and that was surprising for many board members, was the existence of a number of what's called legacy reserves that were unfunded, and the unfunded part, they're unfunded reserves. So there were numbers on paper that represented significant amounts of money, some of them in the millions of dollars in reserve, and the reserves were going up. But unbeknownst to many on the board, those reserves didn't actually have money in them. They were aspirational reserves. So Vancouver Island Regional Library is adopted this new framework and is trying to close the gap between these unfunded reserves and available cash and make it link up. On a more positive note, the construction of the new library in Masset on Haida Gwaii is proceeding as planned, and will incorporate a Haida language immersion lab. So that will be very nice to see. In September, of course, 18 to 22, UBCM, the big topics on the front of many sessions: wildfire, housing, water. These were big issues. And I'll keep my comments brief. There's been a lot of discussion at this table, but the ones plenary that stood out to me was the health risks of wildfire smoke, and that was a really interesting and eye-opening session. And I think moving forward, when we get health advisories from wildfire smoke, that I think there may be some information we might play a bit of a role in making sure we communicate that to our public, because one of the things that stood out to me really strongly was the some of the really negative health risks or health effects came about at relatively low levels of smoke, low densities of smoke, and also low duration. So 2 to 3 hours, and hospitalizations were going up, and health incidents were going up, and kind of relatively low levels. So that was really eye-opening. And finally, I came back on Friday night actually, and jumped right into the Lasqueti Fall Fair, which was a huge success. We managed to just squeak through with a little bit of rain, but it was mostly pretty good, as Director Gisborne mentioned for his fall fair. This is the 11th fall fair that I've co-organized, and I'm very grateful to everyone who volunteered and my co-organizers who really stepped up. But there were more than 100 people who volunteered, just the volunteers. There were probably 300 people that showed up, but 100 of them were volunteers. And we raised approximately $3,600 for the Lasqueti Community Association. And I really like the idea of the donations as entrance. We also try to keep costs down. So we aim to have a great fall fair at reasonable cost for everyone, and also try to raise some money for the community association. In particular, our kitchen renovation that's being planned in the sound system. And with that, I'll return it to you, Chair. Thank you for the time.
Great, thanks, Director Fall.
Chair,
Yes.
I have an add-on that I missed.
Oh, well, I'm just going to say something here. I think Director Fall is being quite generous by saying that the service of the Lasqueti Ferry at this point is, I think he said, not great, but I've heard the stories and it goes beyond not great. So let's hope that they get that sorted out soon. Okay, Director Elliott.
Could we use the word abysmal?
Any adjective.
Yeah.
So when I met the minister around BC and the topics were come up, I did point out that the BC Ferries Advisory Committee was meeting on that very day here in Pell River in the middle of UBCM, while all the local officials couldn't attend. So I pointed that out, that their engagement strategy seemed to be not in they don't seem to be doing.
You're looking for some of those adjectives?
Yeah.
Fair enough.
They don't seem to be doing an honest attempt at engaging in a way that works. So
when we are all out of town, and that's when they choose to hold the meeting, that was very inconvenient.
Yeah. So I didn't make that one, sorry. Anyway, the thing I missed that I wanted to point out is the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation is on September 30th, which is Saturday. Everybody in the community is welcome to walk. I think people are gathering starting 1:32-ish, and the walk is going to go from the old hospital grounds in T-Squat down to Wellington Beach, and it will have, starting at 3 o'clock, for those who don't want to walk, want to just go to Wellington Beach, we'll have some ceremonies and things to recognize the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation.
Thank you for mentioning that. And Director Gisborne, you had a comment?
Yeah, I missed something in my report. A fellow director from up in the interior told me some good information that I should share with my community and my board. He said the first one is, if you're looking to get your insurance renewed, try and have your insurance renewed in January, because with all the fires that they've been having, when people are trying to get their insurance renewed in the summertime, some companies won't even touch them. So that was a good piece of advice, because in January, they're still trying to figure out what those rates are going to be. And the second one, which was an eye-opener that I didn't even recognize, was he said, in part of his community, they had 30% of the houses in a service area burned down. But because it's a rural area, 75% of the property value was in the house. So that works out to roughly a 22% loss of assessed value going up in smoke from a fire. And what that results in is everyone else's taxes going up through the roof because they lost so many houses. And that's something that, we hear about the health impacts and all the other issues with fire. But when you have this massive reduction in your assessed value, and of course we do our budgets and they get the tax notice, and then they're not actually, the community's not going to feel that hit until next cycle's tax budget, because they have such a reduction in their assessed value. So that was something that was very eye-opening to talk to those elected officials from fellow areas. So sorry I missed that, Chair.
No, that's quite all right. Thank you for the comments. So that is the director's report. We moved on to the consent agenda. And if anybody has an item they would need to remove from it, speak now or forever hold your peace. Director Gisborne.
11:16, if
Okay, 11:16, we'll make that 12. No other hands. Can I get somebody to move the consent agenda? Director Gisborne, Director Fall. You had your chance for discussion, I guess. All in favor? Anyone opposed? None opposed. Motion carried. So moving on to 12.1. Former 11:16. Somebody like to move this, or how do we want to proceed with this? I guess Director Gisborne took it off the consent agenda. Director Fall had his hand up. Okay, moved, seconded by Director Dowd. Discussion. Director Gisborne.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the effort that this assembly has taken into trying to massage and work our meeting schedules. I know that several weeks ago when we had this discussion, we had been meeting for many, many hours and we were kind of getting to the ends of our rope. I've had quite a bit of time to think about this, and it seems like this motion that's before us is for October, November, and December. But then we'll kind of be back in the same position for trying to figure out what is our meeting schedule like for next year. One of the issues I see with what's right before us, well, let me back it up and I spoke to some other community leaders in some nonprofits. I talked to some electoral area directors at UBCM, and there was a few things that kind of popped out at me. One of the ones is, when you can have a shorter meeting time, you kind of avoid the risk of kind of burning each other out. And if you got multiple meetings all in the same day, it's like, yes, that meeting only lasted for an hour and a half or 2 hours, but it's kind of an accumulative experience. Like we do planning committee and then finance committee. So for those of us on the planning committee, we get into finance and we've already kind of put in several hours of work. And then we get into finance. The other big issue that has me concerned is when we have a board meeting and a committee meeting on the same day. And I've run into this problem in another organization where committee meetings are really there for having a discussion, for trying to identify what the problem is, for working together, and for more of that kind of freewheeling discussion to kind of go, hey, what is the problem? But when we get to a board meeting, it's about business, and we want to make sure our comments and our discussion is relatively short so that we can get through it. And a board meeting is what I hear is for debate. Committee's discussion, board is for debate. And when you have both a committee meeting and a board meeting on the same day, it's very easy for those kind of interpretations and behaviors to kind of start to overlap. So you start ending up with debate at a committee level and discussion at a board level, and that can lead to issues. So that's why I wanted this pulled from the agenda. I'm actually in support of voting it down. I'm not happy with the current system of how we're meeting. But I think that this proposal or this resolution in front of us does actually kind of take us, a bit down the garden path where we're going to start having board meetings and committee meetings on the same day. And I really want our committee meetings to be about discussion so we can identify issues. And then when we get to the board meeting, we get down to business. So that's my thoughts. Thank you, Chair.
Any other comments, Director McCormick?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd rather see the schedule as proposed today than continuing with what we have been doing. I believe that we can differentiate and know the difference between a committee meeting and a board meeting. So we are able to act accordingly at each meeting. So that doesn't concern me. But I guess what concerns me is just the length of the hospital district meeting today, and whether or not starting, the hospital committee of the whole and all that starts at 3, the board meeting starts at 3:30. I'm just kind of throwing it out there. Should we add some more time? Because it looks like we're going to be getting into some, probably, meaty discussions at hospital board. And maybe we should allow more time for that to take place. but I support the recommendation. I'm willing to try it. It's only for 2 months. I am a little concerned in December because there will be no opportunity for items from Committee of the Whole to then be approved by the board by the end of the year. But you know what? That's just a one-time thing. So yeah, I can support it, but I don't see it as being the final version of what it is we're trying to achieve. So we're on the route. So okay. I'll go there. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Director Elliott.
Thank you, Chair. So I do think this schedule is an improvement over what we have been having. I think having 2 regional meetings per month will shorten those in duration. Things that are time pressured, we'll find more ways to get to the board in a timely way. If there are time pressures for some things that may not necessarily require, I guess it is required to go to Committee of Whole. Is that part of our procedure, or can things go directly to the board?
Thank you, through the chair. Things can go directly to the board, but it's always been preferred to have them go through a committee level before going there.
Yeah, so I'm just saying there is an option to put time pressured things directly to the board if need be. If we don't like it, we can kick it back to Committee of Whole. I mean, that happens. So maybe we don't have it perfect, and maybe there's a way to make this better. I do think that there is a real interest in some people who are trying to work other jobs, that trying to get more done on the days that they've set aside for regional district is a real interest that they have, and that's kind of how we ended up this way. And people who are traveling would like to be able to get more done on the days when they get here. It may not be perfect for everyone, but it is working for a number of people, and they do prefer it. So I'm okay with this.
Okay, thanks very much. Seeing no other hands, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Director Gisborne opposed. Motion carries. Moving on to resolutions. 13.1, community to community forums. I have a recommendation. I have a mover, Director Elliott. And seconded by Director McCormick. Thank you very much. Any discussion? Director Elliott?
I just wanted to highlight that the motion that the regional district put forward to UBCM regarding recognizing Indigenous folks in the community charter section 90 did pass. I didn't have to speak to it or defend it because it went into the recommended block of the UBCM section. And so that was, I just wanted to report out that was linked to, how we function. So thanks.
Yeah, and I was pleased that it was not pulled out of the block because we were in a ministerial meeting when it would have been discussed. So none of us would have been there. Director Gisborne, did you have your hand up or did I see that? I know Director Dowd does, but
I'd like to hear from Director Dowd first.
Director Dowd.
And the motion, which is a different motion than this one, that the regional district and the city both sent to UBCM was in the block of endorsed resolutions, and it was unanimously endorsed pretty much by the body there, which was a good thing. This is a different one, and I explained at the previous meeting why I wouldn't be voting in favor of it, because there is no definition in the motion or anywhere that I know of that describes what the mechanics of Shanaman law are that could be invoked to go in camera. I think our constituents deserve a definition. They deserve to know what that is. And I think it's important that we do everything we can to be transparent, make sure that we have the trust of the community by doing things in public. So not arguing, I think I know how this is going to go, but I'm clarifying why I'm going to be voting against it.
Okay. CAO has, no, you don't want to make a comment? Oh, okay. Director Gisborne.
I'll jump in now. The wording of the resolution has me raise some concerns. The resolution states that the Cathett Regional District move forward and participate in C3 forums observing Section 89 and Section 90 of the Community Charter, but respecting that the mechanics of Shanaman law can be invoked to go in camera. It reminds me of kind of like marriage counseling. I love you, but I respect you, but this resolution, the first section, section 89 and section 90 of the community charter are a meeting of the council must be open to the public, except as provided in this division. We are local government. We must follow the community charter. There are no ifs, ands, or buts about that. We have to follow it. We do, I believe everyone at this table respects that the Tla'amin Nation respects Tla'amin law and how they can invoke to go in camera. But we, as a local government, following and adhering the community charter and the Local Government Act, we don't get to invoke Tla'amin law and how we do our business. We must follow the community charter and the Local Government Act. I think there are other avenues, there are other paths, other ways that we can work together with Tla'amin Nation. We also must remember that we represent constituents and a voter. And elected officials are kind of like schizophrenic roommates. A by-election or a general election can change the personality of the entire board. And we can do a lot of really good work with relationship building with Tla'amin Nation. And they, as I understand, have an upcoming election next year, next fall. We just had our election last fall. So as people change at our boards and our councils and the legislative body of the Tla'amin Nation, we are a continuing body. But those relationships between the individuals changes because the individuals change. And I think the best way forward is with good structure, good understanding, because we can all go and meet with Tla'amin, and we can all be respectful and keep, things that are relayed to us in confidence out of respect. But a simple by-election can have a new person at the table that may not have been part of all these conversations. And there's no provision within Tla'amin law to essentially penalize a local government elected official from disclosing that information when it wasn't done at an in-camera meeting. It might have been an in-camera meeting with Tla'amin Nation, but it's not an in-camera meeting of the regional district or the city of Powell River. And I will echo what I heard at the last C3 from our friends and neighbors in the Tla'amin Nation. When we come together to do a C3 meeting, we want to get to business. We want to start making decisions and we want to start moving forward. But the ombudsperson says that when we don't have an actual meeting under the community charter, we can't move business forward. We can't make those decisions. So I would rather see another avenue, another structure, so that we're all on the same page and that we can make decisions collectively. Because we're spending a lot of time talking about process and procedure when I think we all want to just get down to business and work together. That's my thought. So that's why I don't support the resolution in front of us, but I absolutely support working with the Tla'amin Nation and the city of Powell River so that we can move forward as a community, because we're all stuck by the same two ferries. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Director Fall.
Thank you, Chair. I also want to, move forward and work together with the Tla'amin, which is why I will strongly support this resolution. Reconciliation is hard, and no one said it would be easy. And if it was easy, then you're probably if reconciliation efforts are easy, then it's probably not enough. It has to be challenging. It has to be meaningful. And we've had a lot of discussion around this, and I hear the concerns, and I don't entirely disagree with them. But we are talking about meeting with the nation, and we're talking about reaching out more than halfway, more than half the time. And I think moving forward and talking with the Tla'amin, and I think some of these concerns can be part of the conversation. There's no reason in my mind why we can't ask for the Tla'amin at one of our upcoming C3s for a information and learning on our part about Tla'amin law, both respecting the in-camera provisions, but in general, because the more we learn, reconciliation is also primarily about settlers learning, settler culture learning about First Nation issues. And so I think that would be a really useful thing. I would be very open to learning more about that. And then nothing is fixed either. The way we meet can adjust and evolve over time, but we're not going to be able to adjust and adapt over time unless we meet. So I think we need to meet. In my mind, I think it's imperative that we meet. We meet in a way that the Tla'amin are comfortable with, and the concerns that are raised by directors at this table, I think, are valid concerns to raise there too, where appropriate, and for us to learn and all learn around the table how we can move forward and work better together. But I think it starts with us reaching out, taking what seems to be a bit of a risk. I don't see it as a risk myself, but I see the risk of not doing this much higher than the risk of doing it. And I think we need to meet and go forward and be open about concerns that we might have, and then trying to find resolution. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see other hands, but this is your second go around, right? Is that?
I have not spoken.
Oh, you haven't? Okay, my error. Director.
Oh, wait, sorry, I did.
I think you started off.
Yeah, I started out with some information.
Okay, Director Lennox would like to speak, and then you can speak a
Thank
second
you,
time.
thank you, Chair.
Okay, there's the button. Thank you, Chair. You know, this is, we have been going around a long time on this topic, and I think we all have the same objective. I totally respect what the directors have brought to our attention, that we haven't defined Tla'amin law, but we also, I echo Director Fall's sentiments about we have to relearn some of this and work together on it. I'm prepared to be brave on this subject, and I think it's going to require us to define that. My recollection of the meeting we had with the nation is that we did ask them to define those situations that would cause them concern, and so I'm prepared to support this motion because I think it's time to. We're at the leading edge of this subject, excuse me, in the province. I don't see any reason not to, as Director Fall said, continue to evolve this subject and change it and adapt as we go. If we see it going sideways, the way that, and we agree, we change. Thank you.
Very much, Director McCormick.
Yeah, thank you. Really to echo Director Fall's comments, we either move forward or we don't. And I'm in favor of moving forward, and this is the next step in the process. So I hope everyone will support this recommendation.
Great. Director McCormick and Director Elliott. Here you go.
Thank you. Sorry, my initial comments were not about the motion itself, but rather information that supports moving forward. I've spoken about this before, and I'll say it again. There is no good future for Cathet where we don't have good relationships with Tla'amin Nation. I support the motion because I have every faith in our CAO and staff to ensure that we are not breaching any of our own legislation when we are in meetings or in forums. We are incumbent to follow our rules, not Tla'amin Nation. So we can meet, we can have C3 meetings and behave accordingly, according to our own rules. So if there are things that ought to be in public, we don't talk about it. That's the way it works. That's on us. We can still meet with Tla'amin Nation in a way that they're comfortable so that we can build relationships and learn how to adapt our systems, because government to government relationships don't get to be dictated by any one particular party. That's just the way it works. You can't move forward. You can't solve issues without talking to one another. So this gets us talking. We need to talk. I'm in favor of doing that. Thank you.
Great. Director Gisborne, second time around, and just make sure it's something new.
Absolutely.
Brought to the table.
Absolutely. And love the conversation, love everyone's input. And I think we all agree that we want to continue the discussions with Tla'amin Nation. Now, my thoughts are, We've already passed resolutions about engaging Klamath Nation in the C3 forum. We passed those resolutions and we have met, though not meeting, with Klamath Nation in the past. So I look at this motion and I go, we've already passed a motion such as this multiple times. We've been meeting with Klamath Nation multiple times, multiple C3s, and therefore I don't see the need to pass another motion that essentially does the same thing. And I completely agree with Director Fall that reconciliation is hard, it's work, and it's going to take a lot of effort. It's not easy. But passing this motion, which I think is very much the same as previous motions, is easy. It's easy to pass this motion. But building a structure where we can make decisions, building a structure where we can have those discussions, because I recall the previous C3 where there's a bunch of issues that are being brought up by our friends and neighbors in Shanaman, and those of us at the regional district and the city aren't really participating because we could be perceived as moving along a decision that affects the regional district or the city. And I find that to be disrespectful because we are handcuffed by the community charter, and our elected officials are being, diligent and making sure that we are not breaching that those restrictions that are outlined by the Ombudsperson and the Local Government Act and the community charter. So the reason why I'm opposed to this motion is because I don't think it's necessary. We've already passed resolutions about meeting with the Klamath Nation. And I think if we vote this motion down, those previous motions still stand. We can continue to meet with the Klamath Nation and the city of Powell River and move forward. What I think is that this resolution doesn't go far enough. This resolution is too easy. Making a structure is hard. That does put in work. And that is what I think we should be working on so that we can collectively come together and talk about the issues. That does move things forward. That does move along the decision making, because unless we're having an actual meeting, we're not allowed to move items of business forward. But the way we can collectively move items of business forward comes with structure, and building structures is hard. That's what I would like to see. So I'm going to vote against this motion, and that's not because I'm opposed to meeting with Klamath. Quite to the contrary. I'm opposed to this motion because we've already passed motions like this multiple times. We can continue to meet with Klamath whether this motion passes or not, but I think that we should roll up our sleeves, do the hard work, build the structure that's necessary to make decisions collectively. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Director Dodd, something new now. We spent a lot of time at committee of the whole discussing this, and it seems like we're going around and around, but if you can keep it brief, I'd really appreciate it.
I would like to keep it brief, Chair. I want to remind the directors that I did not say that I was opposed to reconciliation. I think reconciliation is one of the most important things that faces us day to day as a member of local government. I am not opposed to moving forward. I am not opposed to meeting. I'm not opposed to any of those things. Matter of fact, I think they all need to be done. Yeah, but I do think that transparency in local government is extremely important. And I do not understand the mechanics of Klamath law as they would apply to a C3 meeting. I explained in my first speech that that's why I was voting against this. I haven't changed my mind.
Thank you very much. So, seeing no other hands, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Directors Gisborne and Dowd opposed. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Item 13.2, role of local government and agricultural land reserve exclusion application process. Moved by Director McCormick, seconded by, I'm going to put a hand up here.
I'll second for discussion.
Lennox actually beat you to it. So. All right, discussion. All right, Director Gisborne.
Well, thank you. I will gladly jump in on this one. I support the work that is being done by the Texada Island Nonprofit Seniors Housing Society. I understand the challenges of trying to find a suitable location for seniors housing. And this is where it's not, are you in favor of seniors housing or opposed to seniors housing? This is more so, you got to make the balance. ALR and seniors housing. And this is something I talked to someone down in UBCM about, is quite often in local government, it's not about making the right decision and the wrong decision. It's about making, a tough decision and a tougher decision. It's in balance. My concern is that once you start opening the door for removing land from the ALR for the purposes of housing, it is very hard to close the barn doors, to use an agricultural pun. Once that horse leaves the stable, everyone else starts coming in with applications asking for, hey, well, you let them do it, why can't we do it? If this application was for a non-adhering residential use on the ALR, I would support it gladly, because then that would allow them to move forward with their seniors housing, maintain that emphasis on, community gardens. It would still have an agricultural scope to it. We saw from their presentation that they would like to have, their dwellings on, non-impactful foundations, so that the land could still be, protected. And then maybe 10 years, 20 years, 30 years from now, they find a better piece of property and the land could then go back to agricultural use, because it would then stay in the ALR. That is why I don't actually support this resolution, but I do support the work that the Texada Island Nonprofit Seniors Housing Society is doing. It's valuable work, it's important work, but we do have to recognize that the ALR has been around for longer than I've been alive, and I am extremely thankful of the elected officials, what was it, back in the 70s, that made the tough decision to bring in the agricultural land reserve to protect farmland, because I am living on ALR and I absolutely love it, with all the rules and restrictions that it comes with, because we can keep farming and providing food security. And yes, some people can grow flowers. But when it comes down to it, this is that tough decision between these two priorities. And I think about the long time lasting impact of our land use. And I think ALR is something that lasts long beyond our own lives. So if this was an application for non-adhering residential use, I would support it in a heartbeat. But since it's exclusion of the ALR, I can't support it. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Director Gisborne. Director McCormick had her hand up.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I do support this recommendation. I don't believe it is our purview at our table to be making decisions or judgments about the agricultural land reserve. All we can do is make recommendations to go to their body for their consideration. It's not up to us to decide whether or not this piece of land, which is not planted with any renewable product, it's just basically planted with scrub, whether it has value. That'll be up to the agrologists that are being hired to provide soil reports, and that'll be up to the Agricultural Land Commission. So this recommendation is about supporting a community group in Quebec that has risen out of nowhere, out of nothing, and created a viable housing project which people on Texada desperately need. This is something that will really enable the community to move forward in being able to age in place, in being able to stay on the island when you can't work the big acreage anymore. It makes so much sense. Whether it's the semantics of an exclusion or a non-adhering use, I believe that this project is worthy of support, and it will be up to the Agricultural Land Commission to decide whether or not they support it as well. I support our community group, and I believe we should move forward on this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Elliott.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm very committed to housing. I support the project. I'm also a little worried about how we address food security and our ALR in general. If you were talking about taking up a piece of your marine shore and compromising it with a building or some such thing, they would require you to do a no net loss of habitat in the marine area. And the reason for that is so that we get enhancement and improvement and we have more at the end instead of less. I think agriculture, the ALR and the ALC needs better policies around this question, because local governments are not just here to worry about housing, which I do, and we are also here to worry about food security and other things. And the ALR is supposed to support food security and agriculture well into the future, long past all of our lives, into 7 generations, 7-generation thinking. And if we don't have a proper policy around retaining agricultural lands into the future, and we continue just to erode it away, and we have we don't have a way of replenishing it. Every time one of these really supportable projects comes forward that requires a chunk of our ALR, we will eventually have none. That's just the way it works. And so while I support the project and I'm going to vote for this particular, in favor of this motion, I'm also in favor of better policy for no net loss of ALR. So land exchange basically, instead of just taking it out. So if you want to take a piece out and it really is non-productive, how about we put a better, more productive piece back in? That would be my preference to secure the future of my grandchildren and so forth in the future. Thanks.
Okay, Director Fall.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to carry on with the thought process raised by Director Elliott. I'm going to support this, at least at present, unless I hear otherwise, but with some hesitation. I think, there's 2 parts of this. The Texada Island Nonprofit Seniors Housing Society, fantastic organization. What they're trying to achieve is absolutely essential, and I fully support them, but we're being asked in a way is 2 pieces. One is to support their initiative and this arrangement with Selkirk Mountain Forest Land, generous offer to donate land, to build up this facility, build it out and provide the needed housing. I think that aspect unequivocally I support, and I think it's absolutely a really good thing. It looks like a good location. But what we're also being asked to do, and this is a downloading from the province, is to support and actually submit the application for the exclusion from ALR. And, so I sympathize with the comments by both by Director Gisborne and Director Elliott. I think there is a big concern here, and I think we really need to be careful, which is the hesitation part I have. And I just want to raise this resolution that was passed at UBCM, which is that the UBCM petitioned the ALC to reinstate responsibility for ALR exclusion applications back on private property owners. If that's how it was, if we went back and we weren't being asked to submit the application, if we are simply being asked to support Tinch's and the application and support for their housing, I don't think we'd be having this debate. I think the debate we're having around this table is because we're being asked to submit this decision, which lands on our shoulders and our responsibility, but we're not the ALC. That they'll ultimately make the decision, and it's ultimately should be between the landowner and the ALC, and the local government shouldn't be put in this position where we're being asked to struggle with this. So I'm going to support this, but I do think we should keep a good eye on what the province responds to with that resolution from UBCM, and maybe even continue with that advocacy and thought the policies in our own organization in terms of how we see our role when applications come forward. What are our criteria? Because one application isn't really the issue for the ALR. The issue is if this leads down a path of erosion and loss of agricultural land over time, then we got we're heading in a bit of the wrong direction. But in this case, I'll support it, but with these concerns. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Director Gisborne. Lennox.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to listen to the discussion, and you've all brought up some very good points. I too had some concern with this kind of split intent of this. Because it's a no-brainer to support the effort and all the work that went into it, and tackling housing in this way would be a real win for the people in Texada for sure. So I'm prepared to support it, but it's, again, the points that have been raised around us making these types of decisions. I also feel for myself, I'm going to go with the committee recommendation as well mentioned in the report. Again, Director Gisborne's made some good points in the past about engaging that committee and listening to their recommendations. And so I consider that as well. And they've made a good point about the capability of that property. And I finally think that, you know, progressive ideas and long-term thinking like Director Elliott has provided us, you know, if again, for a non-productive being exchanged, that's what we should be focusing on for solutions. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Gisborne. New information?
Yeah, just want to clarify, in the past, it used to be up to the ALC, like private property owner sends the application to the ALC and they would make the decision. We are not the ALC, so we don't make the final decision, but we as a board do make a decision on whether or not we forward such an application to the ALC. So we do have a role under the new legislation. And I know that it's frustrating and absolutely, you know, that's where we're hearing from UBCM and all of their local government officials that are saying like, hey, you know, like we don't really want to be in the way of these kind of applications because it's kind of making a lot of these proposals very political. And when the ALC is going to look at these applications, you know, their priority is agricultural land and agricultural productivity. My concern is still very specific to, you know, nonprofits are looking for land to do housing, and there's more and more local government partnerships that are looking for, you know, working with nonprofits so that they can get housing built. There's the city of Powell River, which has a long history of, you know, agricultural land reserve challenges within the city limits. You know, there's issues around how do we do like a no net loss. And I think we're kind of at the start of more and more applications, not just to this local government, but to municipalities, to other regional districts, where nonprofits are partnering with local governments and they're saying, hey, where can we get land for a relatively affordable price so that we can build some housing? And because the ALR rules are the way they are, ALR is the cheapest land you can get. That's just how it is, because you can't build a bunch of housing on it. You can't build a bunch of big industry on it. So ALR, there's always folks that they're saying, hey, I found this great piece of property. It's, you know, 30 acres and the price is so good. And I want to get it. And then they find out it's in the ALR and they say, oh, well, I wasn't planning to do farming, so I'm not going to buy it. And this is the issue at heart, because there's going to be more applications. There's going to be more asking for land removed from the ALR for housing of nonprofits. And honestly, I think we should just close the door right now. Otherwise, you're going to have more nonprofits putting in a lot of time and a lot of effort trying to get the development approved. And, you know, time is precious. And I know it's hard because this organization has put in time and put in money and a great deal of effort to get going. And it's like, for us to turn around and say no, yes, it's not fair to them with all the work they've done. But to be fair to all the other organizations and nonprofits that are looking to do housing, I think we kind of got to send a message saying, look, you know, if you are looking to do nonprofit housing, we'll support it, but not on the ALR, because otherwise they're going to be spending money and resources pursuing something that might not, you know, amount to anything. So I just wanted to reiterate or express that we do actually have a role in making a decision on ALR. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So, you know, Director McCormick.
Thank you. And excuse me, I'll be brief. The intent of the project, you know, is to provide seniors housing. I hear all the sensitivities that have been raised about using ALR land. Frankly, I believe the agricultural land reserve needs to go through a bit of an overhaul in the way housing just for farms is provided. So you know, I think what we're doing is sending the message that this type of project is important. We're still respectful. You know, if it was a valuable piece of agricultural land, the landowner would not be willing to just give it away. So it's a real team effort, the community supporting it, the landowner supporting it. And I think that for us to not support it would be a real disservice to all of those people. So they will be putting in community gardens and pathways and nature walks. And I believe that is truly honoring the intent of agricultural land, to bring that land to the use of the people. So thank you, Chair. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no other hands, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Director Gisborne opposed. Motion carries.
Director Lennox was also.
Oh, Director Lennox, sorry, were you opposed?
Oh, okay,
No,
just late hand.
Okay, late hand.
Late hand.
This is way over in Cranbrook. Take a while to get
Can we
here.
have a very quick bio break?
We're very close to the end here, I think.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm with you, but let's power through it. We'll get there. As long as we're not extensive discussion, but anyway, item 14.1, would somebody like to move, read that?
I'll move the board give first and second reading to Directors Remuneration and Expenses Amendment Bylaw number 558.6, 2023.
Seconded. Director Elliott, thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries.
I move that the board give third reading of Directors Remuneration and Expenses Amendment Bylaw number 558.6, 2023.
Seconded. Director Elliott, discussion? None. All in favor? Any opposed? None opposed.
I move that the board adopt Directors Remuneration and Expenses Amendment Bylaw number 558.6, 2023.
Seconded. Director Elliott, discussion? Seeing none. All in favor?
I was gonna say something.
Oh, you were?
Yeah,
Oh,
just
sorry.
for the public's benefit, this bylaw is to bring our remuneration bylaw up to snuff with changes to the code of conduct so that we can implement the code of conduct should it be needed. So that's what it is. Thanks.
Good comment. Okay, so any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. 14.2, Catholic Regional District Permissive Tax Exemption Bylaw number 593, 2023. Director McCormick.
Thank you. I'll move that the board give first and second reading of Catholic Regional District Permissive Tax Exemption Bylaw number 593, 2023.
Director Gisborne, second that. Any discussion? All in favor? None opposed? Motion carries. Director McCormick.
I'd move that the board give third reading of Catholic Regional District Permissive Tax Exemption Bylaw number 593, 2023.
Seconded by Director Gisborne. Discussion? None. All in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries.
And that the board adopt Catholic Regional District Permissive Tax Exemption Bylaw number 593, 2023.
Seconded Director Gisborne. Discussion. Director Dowd, did you have discussion?
I was gonna vote.
Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Great. 14.3, Catholic Regional District Revenue Anticipation by Borrowing Bylaw number 591, 2023.
I move the board give first and second reading of the Catholic Regional District Revenue Anticipation Borrowing Bylaw number 591, 2023.
Seconded. Director Elliott. All in discussion. All in favor? Any opposed? None. Carries.
I move the board give third reading of the Catholic Regional District Revenue Anticipation Borrowing Bylaw number 591, 2023.
Seconded by Director Elliott. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm slow.
It's all right. Discussion, seeing none, all in favor? None opposed, motion carries. And
I move the board adopt Catholic Regional District Revenue Anticipation Borrowing Bylaw number 591, 2023.
seconded by Director Elliott. Discussion, all in favor? None opposed, motion carries. And we're on to new business. I've got my motion here. I think it's up on the board now. The board sent letters to ministers and ministry staff that the board met with at the 2023 UBCM convention, expressing our appreciation for their time and consideration for our issue. Second by Director Gisborne. Any discussion? Director McCormick? Oh, you're voting in favor?
No, okay.
Okay, any discussion? Director Elliott.
Thank you for bringing the motion forward. I support the motion. I think it's a really good idea to follow up with letters. And thank you for doing so.
It just shows our appreciation and maybe brings us to the, who knows? If we can help out in any way, that's great. So, all in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries.
I have a comment.
Oh, you
Sorry,
did?
I
Okay.
should have said when I was commenting. I think that if we remind in our letter what it was we were talking about, like a little bit of a thank you for meeting to talk about this,
Mhm.
it might help trigger memories about what it was we were there.
I'm sure staff has taken that up. Thank you very much. Question period.
Thank you, Chair. Galinsky from the Peak here. I don't have any questions this afternoon. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, so we are to the in-camera session. Director Gisborne has run off, so yes, Director Elliott, please.
I move that the board move in camera and that the meeting be closed to the public on the grounds that the subject matter to be considered relates to matters covered by the community charter under section 91E, the acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land or improvements. If the board considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the regional district. G, litigation or potential litigation affecting the regional district. I, the receipt of advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. K, negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provision of a regional district service that are at their preliminary stages and that in the view of the board could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the regional district if they were held in public. L, discussions with regional district officers and employees respecting regional district objectives, measures, and progress reports for the purposes of preparing an annual report under section 98, annual regional district report. And N, the consideration of whether a board meeting should be closed under the provision of this subsection or subsection 2.
Thank you. Seconded, Director Gisborne. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. We're going in camera. Okay, thanks for coming back. We have no rise and report from the in-camera sessions, so this meeting is adjourned. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, everyone.
Good seeing you all. See you next week.
Thanks, Arnold.
Came back to say goodbye. Okay, bye everyone.
Bye, everyone.